For this video, I want to acknowledge and thank Square Enix for providing a copy of Visions of Mana. Very grateful to you guys and excited to share my thoughts on it. So how does Visions of Mana hold up to the rest of the series? Is Mana alive and well, or should the series be kept in my memory? And more importantly for this channel, what can you expect to experience when you play the game? What lessons and themes will you experience, and who is this game for? Here are all my thoughts in this installment of Prof's Recommendations. Visions of Mana is the latest installment in the long-running Mana or Seiken Densetsu series, or Legend of the Sacred Sword. Following the path pioneered by the likes of Final Fantasy Adventure, Secret of Mana, Trials of Mana, and Legend of Mana. Now, I've been a fan of the series since I was a kid playing Final Fantasy Adventure on my Game Boy, and I have core gaming memories with my dad and brother for Secret of Mana, which, by the way, you can hear about right here. So, I had high hopes for when I first saw the trailer for Visions of Mana. One of the first things that I look for in a game is immersion, and that's going to look at the presentation of the game, the graphics, the sound, and the gameplay. Graphically, Visions of Mana is a triumph in art direction. As a fan of classic animation, this storybook style worked really well for me, and the character models set to dynamic, painted backgrounds almost really made me feel like I was playing in a cartoon. There were several moments of sunlight piercing through the trees or reflections on a lake that stopped me in my tracks. I have so many pictures on my hard drive because of this game. Also, this game really deserved a photo mode. This beautiful world comes alive thanks to a memorable soundtrack that I find myself still humming from time to time. Town themes perfectly fit the moods from lighthearted to melancholy, and battle themes are always appropriately daring. But for me, there are two standouts. The main theme, which riffed on the old Secret of Mana theme, and the songs of a plucky little bard which, when first introduced, felt a little cheesy, but made me almost emotional when they were reprised in the final act and credits.
Not bad, not bad!
Now, gameplay-wise, this is an action RPG through and through. The player has full control of the characters in the open world and can run and jump and explore accordingly. However, exploration is more than just running around. There are a number of special abilities based on magical elements that diversify gameplay, from riding fire rockets to swinging a la a whip or a grappling hook. Additionally, there's tons of things to explore and to discover in the open world, including a hide-and-seek game with cactuses. It's really kind of interesting and totally optional. But as an action RPG, this is a classic action combat system. It's an evolution of earlier Mana games akin to like Kingdom Hearts or even Final Fantasy XVI to a degree. However, in traditional Mana flair, Visions plays with the system in fun and customizable ways, creating combat parties of 3 characters out of the 5 total party members and assigning each one of them one of 8 elemental affinities and weapons, which matters because enemies actually have strengths and weaknesses to certain elements. Well, all this creates myriad possibilities for gameplay. Combined with charged special attacks, kind of like limit breaks in Final Fantasy, and the ability to swap characters on the fly, this is a pretty inventive and varied combat system with real consequences. While I started off Visions with a hack and slash mentality, I quickly had to choose a more strategic tact and prepare for battles accordingly. As one of my professors once told me, sometimes a lack of preparation can work out, but success never rejects proper planning. It's as true in life as when you're fighting a tough monster. One final thing, and by far the thing I found most refreshing, however, was the return of the world map. It's not always in the game, but when you get certain vehicles and modes of transportation, that world map comes back, and it just rekindled an old school nostalgia of soaring the world in Mode 7 style on the Super NES. Man, I miss a world map like this. Just makes the world seem bigger. So for immersion, this game passes the test. The graphics, the audio, the gameplay all combined to form a pretty solid experience that definitely made me feel like I was in the world. Now, story-wise, this game really delves into some things that I was surprised about. Loss, grief, regret, living with regret, not undoing the thing that you did wrong. It also went into, surprisingly, a conversation about belief systems that are left unquestioned until they cause pain, about ideologies that need to be examined and scrutinized, persevering through pain, even when you can't do anything to undo that pain. You just kind of accept the consequences. In fact, one of the best moments in the game, in my opinion, is when a character must confess his failure to a village who had placed all their hopes on him. This could have been brushed over, it could have just kind of faded to black and moved on. But they let the player sit in this very uncomfortable conversation where people are falling apart and their dreams are kind of crushed. This was, however, appropriately handled, and it conveyed a great sense of what it feels like to accept regret and failure head on. I'm going to remember that moment because even at my age, I learned something from that moment. It was really, really powerful. The way that you just kind of speak truthfully in that moment and say, hey, I really messed up here. Just a great lesson altogether, and we'll get to that. One thing that I will say about this story, though, is that these are serious themes, but they are never fully explored. The game drives by but never parks in them, except maybe the last example that I gave. And I think that's largely a good thing. There's nothing deeply traumatic, but there's plenty that's thought-provoking. It's kind of insane that this game does all of these things, especially because this game is only about 40 hours long and it's an aesthetic that's pretty pleasing to a younger audience. So the fact that it's really dealing with some of these questions and these themes really took me aback. I thought it was a great idea. Now, whenever I play a game, I'm always asking a deeper question of why did the developers make this game this way? Or why did they choose to tell the story in this particular way? Not only what they focused on, but how does it function for the player? This leads to some of the big lessons that I would use Visions of Mana to teach. This game is a laboratory for deciding when to accept and reject traditional norms. There are times when a person must accept the way of things, and then there's times when a person needs to pursue change. Wisdom is knowing the difference. And Visions of Mana's characters learn this kind of wisdom along the way, and I thought that was a really great point. It's also got a really strong lesson in the permanence of grief. There isn't a moment when grief is, quote, overcome, so much as it's managed. The player will never fully get past some of the failings early on in this game, but the story teaches the player that that's okay, and there's a way of handling those things, but never forgetting them. Finally, and probably for an older audience, I would use this game to help players think about the institutional and belief systems that seem to be unquestionable. This is a story where people are willing to sacrifice themselves to keep the world's destruction at bay, and those who are chosen to do this just willingly accept their fate. This is a ripe discussion, and broader comparative analysis into the real world would be necessary. I loved thinking about this. It's hey, what are the things that I take for granted? What are the things that I just blindly accept? Is that just? Is that right? I think that's a great question for anybody that's playing the game. Now, I've talked about some big themes, and I've talked about a childish kind of aesthetic. It begs the question, who is this game for? So, while it may look like a childish game aesthetically, anyone who likes an action RPG with likable characters and an interesting story should give this a look. I'm a professional adult and really liked this game, and I took a ton of lessons from its themes and its narrative. The adults that are going to love this game, however, are those who want to get lost in a world. They want to talk to every villager and min-max their stats. The themes and lessons for adults are going to feel a little trite, and there are plenty of other games that address these topics in more developed ways, but this is a fun, I would call it comfort food kind of game for adults. That said, I cannot recommend this game enough for older elementary age kids, maybe 7 to 12 years old, and even teenagers. The melodrama of Val's journey will allow them to critically engage with their own relationships and regrets in a safe and guiding way. This is the kind of game I want the kids in my life to play and to discuss with me at the dinner table, just like my dad did with me. And that's probably the last thing that I want to say about this game. Yeah, it's a ton of fun and the story is compelling, but to take it to the next level for younger players, engage them with some questions as you play along. Younger players will especially fall in love with this world and characters, so talk to them about it. Ask them questions like, what do you think Val should have done there? Or, do you think Morley made a mistake here? Or even something as simple as, what is your favorite song in this game? Conversations like these are going to turn this game into one that stays with your kids into adulthood, just as Secret of Mana was for me. So there you have it. Visions of Mana is a triumphant return to form for the Mana series, one that is illuminated in full 3D, one that heightens the storytelling for a lasting impact, and one that's going to really stay with players, especially younger audiences. Hey listen, I hope that you'll pick up Visions of Mana. I want to thank you for watching this recommendation. And if you want to keep taking your gaming to the next level, remember to like and subscribe for more Prof Recs just like this, plus video essays and lecture plays. Until next time, walk tall, my friends, and we'll see you in class.